The message came at 3:47 a.m. Earth Standard Time. Admiral Kong Tae was already awake. He had not slept properly in 3 days, not since the first reports arrived from the Outer Rim colonies. Now he stood in the darkness of his office, watching the holographic display show him something that would change everything. 3 worlds. Gone. Just like that. The Velith Dominion had not even bothered to warn them. Their massive warships had appeared in orbit above the human colonies of New Busan, Harmony, and Dawn's Light. They gave the colonists exactly 1 hour to evacuate. 1 hour for 4.2 billion people. It was impossible, and the Velith knew it. Then, they opened fire. Admiral Khan watched the recordings in silence. He saw cities turn to ash. He saw oceans boil. He saw millions of people running toward ships that would never come. And he saw the Velith commander's message, broadcast to the entire galaxy: the human infestation in Sector 7 has been cleansed. These territories now belong to the Dominion by right of superior civilization. Superior civilization. The words burned in Kang's mind like acid. For 200 years, humanity had been part of the Galactic Concord. They had followed every rule. They had signed every treaty. They had smiled at every insult, nodded at every dismissal, and accepted every unfair decision. The alien empires saw humans as primitives who had somehow stumbled into space. Useful for cheap labor. Good for entertainment. But never equals. Never worthy of respect. And now this. Kong turned off the display and walked to his window. Outside, the city of Seoul stretched to the horizon, its towers reaching toward the stars that humanity had once dreamed of exploring in peace. Those dreams felt very far away now. His communicator buzzed. Admiral, Ambassador Hyun has arrived at the Galactic Council. The session begins in 10 minutes. I'll watch from here, Kong replied. The council chamber on Station Prime was enormous. Representatives from over 300 species sat in their designated areas, arranged by the importance their empires held in galactic politics. The human section was small and, placed near the back, barely visible to the main platform. Ambassador Hyun Soo walked to the speaking podium with slow, measured steps. He was 62 years old, with gray hair and tired eyes. He had spent 30 years as Earth's voice in this chamber, fighting for scraps of recognition, begging for basic fairness. Today, for the first time, his hands were completely still. Honored representatives, Hyun began, his voice calm. 3 days ago, the Velith Dominion murdered 4.2 billion human citizens. They destroyed 3 peaceful colonies that had existed for over a century. They did this without warning, without cause, and without mercy. The chamber was silent. A few alien delegates shifted uncomfortably. Most looked bored. We come before this council seeking justice, Hyun continued. We ask that the Velith Dominion be condemned for this act of genocide. We ask for reparations for the families of the dead. We ask that such actions be prevented in the future. The Velith High Ambassador rose from his seat. His scales gleamed under the chamber lights, and his teeth showed in what might have been a smile. The council should note that these so-called colonies were in contested space. Humanity had no legal right to those worlds. We simply corrected an error. An error, Hyun repeated quietly. 4.2 billion lives. An error. Primitive species often fail to understand proper territorial boundaries, the Velith continued. Perhaps this lesson will help them learn. Several alien delegates laughed. Others nodded in agreement. The council chairman, a being from the ancient Morath race, spoke with obvious impatience. The council has reviewed the territorial records. The human settlements were indeed in space that multiple empires have claimed over the centuries. While the loss of life is unfortunate, the council finds no legal basis for action against the Velith Dominion. Hyun stood very still. Back on Earth, Admiral Khan clenched his fists. I see, Hyun said. So this council's position is that our people's lives have no value. That we can be slaughtered without consequence. That 200 years of faithful membership in this concord means nothing. The Council's position is that humanity should be more careful about where it builds its homes, the chairman replied. This matter is closed. Hyun looked around the chamber. He saw the contempt in their eyes. The dismissal. The certainty that humans would accept this humiliation just as they had accepted every other one. He smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. Very well, Hyun said. Then, humanity has an announcement to make. He paused, letting the silence build. Effective immediately, Earth and all human territories withdraw from the Galactic Concord. All treaties, agreements, and diplomatic relations are hereby terminated. Murmurs spread through the chamber. Some delegates laughed again. The Velith ambassador looked amused. Furthermore, Hyun continued, his voice growing stronger, humanity formally declares a state of war against the Velith Dominion and any power that stands with them. Now there was real laughter. The idea of humans fighting the Velith was absurd. The Dominion had 10,000 warships. Humanity's known fleet numbered less than 300. It would not be a war. It would be pest control. Hyun waited for the laughter to fade. Then, he spoke his final words. For 2 centuries, we asked for peace. We begged for fairness. We received neither. You looked at us and saw weakness. You saw primitives. You saw prey. His eyes swept across the chamber. You were wrong. And now you will learn why every species in this galaxy should have treated us as equals. Enjoy your laughter, honored representatives. It will be the last time you laugh at humanity. He walked out of the chamber without looking back. Within the hour, every human transmission in the galaxy went dark. Ships, stations, colonies, all of them fell silent. The great networks of communication that connected humanity to the rest of the cosmos simply stopped. The galaxy shrugged. Let the primitives sulk in their corner. They would come crawling back eventually. They always did. Deep beneath the mountains of Korea, in a facility that did not exist on any map, Admiral Kong Tae sat at a table surrounded by the most powerful military minds humanity had ever produced. Before him lay a document that had been prepared decades ago, waiting for this exact moment. Are we certain? General Nari Kim asked. She was a small woman with cold eyes and a mind like a supercomputer. Once we sign this, there is no going back. There was never any going back, Captain Unipark replied. She was young for her rank, barely 40, with fire in her voice. They killed 4 billion of our people. Our children. Our families. They laughed about it. Kong picked up the pen. 200 years. That's how long we waited. How long we prepared. How long we let them believe we were weak. He signed his name with a steady hand. That ends now. He looked up at the officers around him. Wake them all up. Across human space, in hidden shipyards and secret bases, lights began to turn on. Engines that had slept for decades started to hum. And humanity began to rise. The galaxy had no idea what was coming. 3 months passed. The galaxy forgot about humanity. It was easy to forget. There were trade negotiations to conduct, territorial disputes to settle, and endless political games to play. The human tantrum, as they called it, became a joke told at diplomatic parties. Remember when those primitives declared war on the Velith? How amusing. How sad. How utterly pathetic. The Velith Dominion certainly was not worried. High Commander Threk Nal had already drawn up plans to absorb the remaining human territories. It would be simple. A few hundred ships to sweep through their space, destroy their pathetic fleet, and claim their worlds. Perhaps they would keep some humans alive as servants. They were good at manual labor, after all. But, in the darkness between stars, something was happening that no one in the galaxy suspected. Specialist Ara Choi sat in a small room filled with screens and blinking lights. She was 28 years old, with quick eyes and quicker fingers. Her job was to listen. For 3 months, she had been intercepting alien communications, sorting through millions of messages for anything important. Today, she found something that made her blood run cold. "General Kim," she said into her communicator, "you need to see this." General Nari Kim arrived within minutes. She read the intercepted message 3 times, her face showing nothing. But Era knew her well enough to see the anger in her eyes. The message was from Velith High Command to their fleet admirals. The subject was called Final Solution. The plan was simple: complete extermination of humanity. Not conquest. Not subjugation. Extermination. Every man, woman, and child. Every colony, every station, every ship. They wanted to erase humans from existence. They were always going to do this, Nari said quietly. The colony attacks were just the beginning. What do we do? Era asked. Nari smiled. It was the kind of smile that would have terrified the Velith if they could see it. We do exactly what we have been preparing to do for 200 years. She led Era through corridors that went deep into the earth, past security checkpoints that required genetic scans and voice recognition. Finally, they reached a massive door that looked like it belonged on a vault. "What you are about to see," Nari said, "is classified beyond anything you have ever encountered. You will tell no one. You will write nothing down. Do you understand?" Era nodded. The door opened. Behind it was a room the size of a small city. Holographic displays covered every surface, showing star maps, fleet positions, and technological readouts. Hundreds of officers worked at stations, coordinating something vast and complex. "Welcome to the Real Earth Defense Command," Nari said. Era stared in disbelief. This is impossible. Our budget, our resources, there is no way we could build something like this." "Our official budget, yes. But humanity learned something important when we joined the Galactic Concord." Nari walked through the room, and Era followed. "We learned that the galaxy would never accept us. That they would always see us as lesser. That sooner or later, someone would try to destroy us." She stopped in front of a massive screen showing a star map covered in green dots. "Thousands of them. So we prepared. For 200 years, we built in secret. Hidden shipyards in asteroid fields. Sleeper fleets in the empty spaces between star systems. Research facilities disguised as mining operations. Every treaty we signed, every weakness we showed, every primitive ship we displayed was a lie." Era counted the green dots. Her mind struggled to accept what she was seeing. "How many ships?" "As of this morning, 12,700 combat-ready vessels. More coming online every day." 12,000? Era whispered. "The galaxy thinks we have 300. The galaxy thinks many wrong things about humanity. They are about to be educated." In another part of the facility, Admiral Kong Tae met with Dr. Jean Wu. The scientist was 73 years old, with white hair and hands that shook slightly from age. But his mind was as sharp as it had ever been. "Is it ready?" Kong asked. Jean Wu led him to a testing chamber where a single torpedo sat on a platform. It looked ordinary enough. But what it could do was anything but ordinary. "Project Prometheus," Jean Wu said with obvious pride. 40 years of my life went into this. The warhead creates a contained singularity. A micro-black hole that exists for exactly 0.3 seconds before collapsing. In that time, it will consume anything within a 2-kilometer radius." Kong stared at the weapon. "And the rest of the program?" "Phase shift drives that allow our ships to pass through solid matter. Neural disruptors that can shut down organic brains across an entire fleet. Adaptive armor that learns from each attack and becomes immune to it." Jean Wu smiled like a proud father. "The galaxy believes they are 300 years ahead of us. The truth is the opposite. How did we develop all this without them knowing? Because they never looked. They were so certain we were primitive that they never bothered to check. Their arrogance was our greatest weapon. Khan nodded slowly. He had always known this day would come. He had spent his entire career preparing for it. But, now that it was here, he felt the weight of what they were about to do. Billions will die, he said quietly. On both sides. Billions of our people already died, Jinwoo replied. And billions more will die if we do nothing. The Velith plan to exterminate us completely. This is not a choice between war and peace. It is a choice between fighting back and extinction. Captain Unipark found the Admiral later, standing alone in front of a holographic display showing the fleet positions. 12,000 ships, hidden across human space, waiting for the order to move. The crews are ready, Yuna reported. Morale is high. Everyone knows what is at stake. And, you? Kang asked. Are you ready? Yuna thought about her parents, who had died on New Busan. Her sister, who had been on Harmony with her 3 children. All gone. All erased because an alien empire decided they were in the way. I have been ready my whole life, she said. I just did not know it until now. Kang turned to face her. Then, let us begin. He walked to the central command platform, where every officer in the room could see him. Screens throughout human space flickered to life, showing his face to every ship captain, every soldier, every pilot who had been waiting for this moment. For 200 years, we have hidden, Kang said. We have smiled at insults. We have accepted humiliation. We have let the galaxy believe we were weak. That time is over. Today, we show them who we really are. Today, we remind the universe why it should never have made humanity angry. He raised his hand. All ships, all fleets, all stations. Begin Operation Awakening. Show them the fury of Earth. Across the darkness of space, 12,000 ships lit their engines and began to move. The storm was coming. The first battle lasted 11 minutes. 400 Velith warships had gathered at Verith Prime, the military heart of the Dominion. They were preparing for the invasion of human space, loading supplies and coordinating attack plans. Their commanders were relaxed, confident, almost bored. This would not be a war. It would be an execution. Then, 50 human ships appeared from nowhere. The Velith sensors did not understand what they were seeing. One moment, empty space. The next, a formation of vessels that should not exist. Their designs were unknown. Their energy signatures were impossible. And, they were already firing. The first singularity torpedo hit a Velith carrier. For 0.3 seconds, a black hole existed where the ship had been. When it collapsed, the carrier and everything within 2 kilometers was simply gone. Not destroyed. Not damaged. Gone. The Velith commanders screamed orders. Return fire. Launch fighters. Form defensive positions. But, their weapons passed through the human ships as if they were ghosts. Phase shift technology, though the Velith had no name for it. Their targets were there but not there, existing between dimensions, immune to conventional attacks. Then, the neural disruptors activated. Across the Velith fleet, thousands of crew members collapsed where they stood. Their brains simply stopped working. Ships drifted without control. Weapons went silent. In minutes, the greatest military force the Dominion had ever assembled became a floating graveyard. When it was over, 48 human ships remained. The Velith lost everything. Commander Hosung watched the aftermath from the bridge of his vessel, the Quiet Thunder. He was the leader of the Ghost Fleet, humanity's special operations force. They had trained for this moment for decades, running simulations, perfecting tactics, waiting. Now the waiting was over. Report, he ordered. Enemy fleet destroyed, sir. 2 of our ships took minor damage from debris. No casualties. Ho nodded. Send the recording to command. Then, prepare for Phase 2. Across the galaxy, the message spread faster than any ship could travel. The battle at Varith Prime became the most watched footage in galactic history. Every species, every empire, every being with access to a screen saw what had happened. They saw 400 warships vanish in minutes. They saw weapons that should not exist. They saw the primitives become something terrifying. The laughter stopped. On Station Prime, the Galactic Council convened an emergency session. The chamber that had dismissed humanity 3 months ago was now filled with fear. Representatives shouted over each other, demanding explanations, pointing fingers, making threats that everyone knew were empty. Ambassador Hyun Soo was not there. Instead, humanity sent a recorded message that played on every screen in the chamber. Honored representatives, Hyun's voice said, you had 200 years to show us kindness. You chose cruelty. You dismissed our dead. You laughed at our pain. Now witness the consequences. The message ended. The chamber was silent. Far from the politics, in the chaos of war, pilot Nina Lee was having the best day of her life. She was 26 years old, small and quick, with reflexes that her instructors had called superhuman. She flew a fighter craft called the Sparrow, a ship so fast that enemy targeting systems could not track it. In the first week of the war, she had destroyed 200 enemy vessels. Today, she was about to add to that count. A convoy of human refugee ships was fleeing from a border colony. 40 Velith fighters had found them. The refugees had no weapons, no defenses. They were going to die. Nina arrived alone. Sparrow won to convoy. Keep going. Do not slow down. I will handle this. The convoy captain sounded terrified. There are 40 of them. You cannot possibly watch me. She dove into the enemy formation like a blade cutting through water. Her ship moved in ways that seemed impossible, changing direction instantly, accelerating beyond what any living pilot should survive. The genetic enhancements that all human soldiers had received made her faster, stronger, and able to think in combat like a computer. The Velith fighters tried to target her. They failed. One by one, she destroyed them, her weapons finding weak points that their designers had thought were hidden. In 4 minutes, 38 enemy fighters were debris. The last 2 tried to run. Nina let them go. She wanted them to tell others what had happened. She wanted the Velith to know that a single human pilot had defeated their squadron. She wanted them afraid. Convoy, you are clear. Proceed to safety. Who are you? Nina smiled inside her cockpit. Just a human. Remember that. Back at command, Admiral Kong Tae watched the war unfold on his screens. Green markers showed human fleets advancing on multiple fronts. Red markers showed enemy positions collapsing everywhere. The plan was working perfectly. But perfection did not bring him joy. He looked at the casualty reports. Human losses were light, far lighter than anyone had expected. But every name on the list was someone's child, someone's parent, someone's friend. War always had a cost, even when you were winning. Captain Yuna Park entered his office. The Velith homeworld's orbital defenses will fall within 6 hours. Their ground forces are surrendering faster than we can process them. And their leadership? High Commander Threkanal has locked himself in the central command bunker. He is broadcasting messages to the galaxy, calling for help. No one is responding. Kong nodded. Of course not. They are all too busy wondering if they are next. He walked to the window of his command center, looking out at screens showing the battle in real time. Human ships were everywhere now, no longer hiding, no longer pretending. The mask of weakness had been torn away, and the galaxy was seeing humanity's true face. Sir, Yuna said quietly, what do we do when this is over? When the Velith are defeated? That depends on them. And on us. Kong turned to face her. Victory is not the hard part, Captain. The hard part is deciding what kind of victors we want to be. On the Velith homeworld, High Commander Threkanal stood in his bunker and watched his empire die. The sky above his planet was filled with human ships. The orbital stations were gone. The defense fleet was gone. Everything he had built, everything his species had conquered over thousands of years, was crumbling in days. He had underestimated them. They all had. His officers looked to him for orders, but he had none to give. How did you fight an enemy that could appear from nowhere, whose weapons ignored your defenses, whose soldiers seemed to feel no fear? How did you defeat a species that had hidden its true strength for 2 centuries, waiting for exactly this moment? You did not. That was the terrible answer. You did not defeat them. You simply prayed they chose to show mercy. Threkanel looked at the human ships filling his sky, and, for the first time in his long life, he understood something important. They were never the prey. We were. 6 months into the war, the Velith Dominion no longer existed. Their fleets were destroyed. Their colonies were occupied. Their leaders were in custody, waiting for judgment. The empire that had ruled 1,000 star systems for 10,000 years had fallen in less than half a year. But the war was not over. Other empires had wronged humanity. Other species had laughed when human colonies burned. And, now, as Earth's fleet spread across the galaxy, a question hung in the air like smoke after a fire: how far would humanity go? Chancellor Dahan asked himself that question every day. He was the civilian leader of Earth, elected to guide humanity through peace. Instead, he found himself leading them through the greatest war in their history. He sat in his office in Seoul, looking at reports from the front lines, and wondered if he was doing the right thing. A knock at his door. Come in. Elder Yongbei entered slowly. He was 90 years old, a veteran of Earth's first interstellar conflicts, when humanity was truly weak. He walked with a cane now, but his mind was still sharp. He had been Dahan's advisor for years. You look troubled, Young said, sitting across from the Chancellor. The Morath Confederacy has requested negotiations, Dahan replied. They want to apologize for supporting the Velith. They want peace. And Admiral Kong wants to refuse. He says words mean nothing. He says they should face consequences like the Velith did. Yang was quiet for a moment. What do you think? I think. Dahan struggled to find the right words. I think we have become very good at destroying our enemies. I am not sure we remember how to do anything else. The old man nodded slowly. That is a wise concern. War changes people. It can make us strong. It can also make us into the very monsters we are fighting against. So what do I do? You remember why we started this war. Not for conquest. Not for revenge. For survival. For justice. The moment we forget that, the moment we become conquerors instead of defenders, we lose something far more important than any battle. Dahan looked at the reports on his desk. Victory after victory. Enemy after enemy falling before human might. It should have felt good. Instead, it felt heavy. I will talk to Admiral Kong, he said finally. We will hear what the Morath have to say. Far across the galaxy, Captain Unipark faced her own moment of choice. Her ships had captured the Velith High Council, the beings who had ordered the destruction of human colonies. They knelt before her now, in the ruins of their own command center, surrounded by human soldiers. Once, they had been among the most powerful creatures in the galaxy. Now, they were prisoners. You know why we are here, Yuna said, her voice cold. You ordered the deaths of 4.2 billion of our people. You called it territorial purification. You laughed about it. The lead counselor, an ancient Velith named Krothval, looked up at her with defiant eyes. We did what any strong species would do. The weak exist to serve the strong. Your people were in our way. And now you are in our way, Yuna replied. By your own logic, we should kill you where you kneel. Krothval said nothing. He was waiting for death. They all were. Yuna's hand rested on her sidearm. She thought about her family. Her parents, incinerated in seconds. Her sister's children, who had been too young to understand why fire was falling from the sky. 4 billion voices, silenced because these creatures thought humans were pests to be exterminated. It would be so easy. One shot. Justice served. But she did not draw her weapon. Death is too easy, she said finally. You wanted to erase us from existence. Instead, you will live. You will watch as everything you built is given to the species you enslaved. You will see your empire become a home for the people you oppressed. And you will know, every single day, that humans could have killed you but chose not to. She turned to her soldiers. Take them to the detention facility. Make sure they are comfortable. I want them to live for a very long time. Crothval stared at her in confusion. This was not how conquerors behaved. This was not how the strong treated the weak. He did not understand. That, Yuna thought, was exactly the point. Kira Song was there to witness it all. She was a war correspondent, one of hundreds who followed the human fleets and documented what they saw. Her broadcasts reached billions of viewers across the galaxy, showing them the face of humanity's war. Today, she stood on a world called Haven, which had been a Velith slave colony for 300 years. The native species, small furred beings called the Mirren, had been worked nearly to extinction. Now, human soldiers were freeing the last survivors from their underground prisons. Kara watched as a young human soldier, barely more than a boy, carried a Mirren child out of the darkness. The child was thin, covered in scars, blinking at sunlight it had never seen. The soldier held it gently, like it was made of glass. You are safe now, the soldier said. No one will hurt you again. The Mirren child did not understand human language. But it understood the tone. It understood the kindness. For the first time in its short, terrible life, it was not afraid. Kira filmed it all. This was the story she wanted to tell. Not just the battles and the victories, but the moments that showed who humanity really was. Later that week, a human fleet discovered a Velith nursery world. Millions of children, too young to understand war, cared for by automated systems after their parents fled. Admiral Kong received the report and made a decision that would define humanity for generations. He ordered the world protected. Human ships formed a defensive perimeter around it. Human doctors went down to check on the children's health. Human engineers repaired failing systems. When his officers questioned the decision, Kong gave a simple answer. They are children. What their parents did has nothing to do with them. But, sir, they would not show the same mercy to our children. No, Kong agreed. They would not. That is the difference between us and them. We do not kill children because someone else would. We do not become monsters because our enemies are monsters. We are human. That must still mean something. Back on Earth, Chancellor Daehan announced that humanity would accept peace negotiations with any species that asked. The war was not about conquest, he declared. It was about teaching the galaxy that humans would not be victims. That lesson had been taught. Now, it was time to build something better. Not everyone agreed. Some wanted revenge. Some wanted to keep fighting until every species that had ever insulted humanity was destroyed. But Daehan held firm. We have shown them our strength, he said in his address to the people of Earth. We have shown them our anger. Now we must show them our wisdom. The measure of a species is not how they treat their enemies in defeat. It is how they treat the future they are building. Elder Young watched the speech from his home, a small house in the mountains where he had lived for decades. When it ended, he smiled. They had not lost themselves. Not yet. There was still hope. Outside his window, the stars shone bright. Somewhere out there, human ships were protecting nursery worlds and freeing slaves and showing the galaxy that strength and mercy could exist together. That, Young thought, was humanity's true victory. 1 year after the war ended, the galaxy was a different place. The Velith Dominion was gone, dissolved into dozens of independent states. Their former slave species now governed themselves, building new societies on the ruins of their oppression. The empires that had laughed at humanity were silent now, careful with their words, respectful in their dealings. And, at the center of it all stood Earth. The new Galactic Compact held its first official session on Station Prime, in the same chamber where humanity had once been dismissed and ignored. But, the seating had changed. The human section was no longer in the back. It was at the center, raised above the others, a symbol of the new order. Ambassador Hyun Soo walked to the speaking podium. He looked older than he had a year ago. The war had aged everyone. But there was peace in his eyes now, a calm that came from seeing a mission completed. Honored representatives, he began, 1 year ago, I stood in this chamber and spoke of war. Today, I speak of peace. The chamber was silent. 300 species listened, waiting. Humanity did not want this war, Hyun continued. For 2 centuries, we asked only to be treated as equals. We were denied. When our people were murdered, we asked only for justice. We were denied. We were left with no choice but to show the galaxy that we could not be ignored. He paused, looking around the chamber at faces that had once laughed at him. We showed you our wrath so you would understand our strength. Now we show you our mercy so you understand our character. Humanity does not seek to rule the galaxy. We do not want an empire. We want what we have always wanted, to explore, to create, to live in peace with others. He raised his hands. The Galactic Compact that we form today is built on a simple principle: all species are equal. Not in strength. Not in numbers. But in rights. In dignity. In the protection they deserve. What happened to humanity will never happen again. To anyone. A murmur spread through the chamber. Some delegates looked skeptical. Others looked hopeful. A few looked ashamed. I have been chosen to serve as the first chairman of this compact, Hyun said. I accept this responsibility not as a conqueror, but as a guardian. Earth will protect the weak. Earth will challenge the unjust. Earth will remember what it felt like to have no one listen to our cries. And we will make sure no species ever feels that alone again. He bowed his head. This is our promise. This is our purpose. This is what humanity chooses to be. The chamber erupted in applause. Not the mocking applause of a year ago. Real applause. Genuine hope. In the audience, Admiral Kong Tae watched with quiet satisfaction. Beside him sat Captain Yuna Park, now Admiral Yuna Park, commander of the entire human fleet. The war had changed her. She was harder now, more serious. But the fire in her eyes had been tempered with wisdom. You did it, she said to Kong. You really did it. We did it, he corrected. All of humanity. I just gave the orders. What will you do now? Kong smiled. It was a tired smile, the smile of a man who had carried a heavy weight for a long time and was finally ready to set it down. I am retiring. My war is over. The next chapter belongs to you. Yuna looked at the chamber, at the representatives of hundreds of species, at the new galaxy that humanity had helped create. I will protect this. Whatever it takes. I know you will. Kong placed a hand on her shoulder. Just remember what we fought for. Not revenge. Not power. Justice. Peace. The moment you forget that, you become no better than the Velith. I will never forget. Good. Then, I leave the fleet in good hands. Across the galaxy, monuments were rising. On Haven, where the Mirren had been enslaved for 3 centuries, a great statue now stood. It showed a human soldier carrying a Mirren child, the image that Kara Song had captured during the liberation. The inscription read, "They came not as conquerors, but as friends. We were slaves. They made us free." On a dozen other worlds, similar monuments appeared. Species that had been forgotten, oppressed, ignored for millennia now had protectors. Human ships patrolled their space. Human teachers built their schools. Human doctors healed their sick. It was not charity. It was debt. For 200 years, humanity had suffered alone. Now they made sure no one else would have to. Elder Yong Bei received many visitors in his final years. Leaders, generals, historians, all wanting to understand what had happened. How had humanity transformed from galactic joke to galactic guardian in just 1 year? His answer was always the same. The galaxy thought our kindness was weakness. They thought our patience was fear. They were wrong. Kindness and patience are choices. We chose them because we believed the galaxy could be better. When it proved us wrong, we chose differently. That is humanity's strength. We can be whatever we need to be. One visitor, a young Mirran diplomat, asked him what humans wanted now that they had such power. Yong smiled at the question. The same thing we always wanted. To explore. To create. To live. We just had to remind the universe to let us. The Mirran looked confused. But, you could rule everything. You could make the galaxy bow to you. We could, Yong agreed. But, that is not who we are. We are builders, not rulers. We are teachers, not tyrants. The day we forget that is the day we truly lose, no matter how many battles we win. Commander Ho Sung returned to active duty, training the next generation of Ghost Fleet operatives. Pilot Nina Lee became an instructor, teaching young pilots the techniques that had made her a legend. Dr. Jean Wu continued his research, now focused on medicine and exploration instead of weapons. General Narration retired to a quiet life, but she kept watching. Always watching. Just in case. And, across the galaxy, a new saying spread among the alien species. It started as a warning, told by parents to children, by teachers to students, by leaders to their people. Humans forgive. But, they never forget. And, they never lose. 10 years after the war, a young alien child asked her parent why humans were treated with such respect. The child had grown up in the new galaxy, where humans were guardians and protectors, where no species feared extinction at the hands of another. The parent thought about the question for a long time before answering. Because once, the entire galaxy made them angry. Every empire. Every species. Every power that had ever dismissed them or hurt them or laughed at them. And humanity rose up and showed the universe something it had never seen before. What? The child asked. That they were never the primitives we thought they were. They were patient. They were kind. They gave us every chance to be good. But, when we took everything from them, when we pushed them beyond their limits, they became something the universe itself fears. The parent looked at the stars, where human ships still patrolled, still protected, still watched. And, we are fortunate, the parent continued, that they chose to be guardians instead of conquerors. Because if they had wanted to rule the galaxy, no one could have stopped them. Instead, they chose to protect it. They chose mercy over revenge. They chose to build instead of destroy. The child was quiet for a moment, thinking. Do you think they will always be that way? I hope so, the parent said. Because the day humans stop choosing mercy is the day the galaxy ends. Far away, on Earth, Admiral Una Park stood on a balcony overlooking the city of Seoul. The towers stretched toward the sky, just as they had when Admiral Kong had stood here years ago, watching the war begin. Now she watched the peace. Ships came and went overhead, carrying traders and diplomats and explorers to 1,000 different worlds. The galaxy was open now. Humanity was free. We will be watchful, she said to no one. We will be ready. But, we will never strike first. She turned and walked back inside, to meetings and decisions and the endless work of keeping the peace. Outside, the stars shone bright with possibility. Humanity had found its place in the universe. Not as victims. Not as conquerors. But, as something better. As guardians. And, the galaxy was grateful.